right, y'all, this is story 43, 11 brothers and 11 sisters. There were 11 brothers who had only one sister. They decided they must go out in the world to find a fortune for her. So they started out traveling to see what they could find to give her a good dowry. They came to a castle that seemed to be empty. They didn't see anyone around, but they saw a table with 11 chairs. 11 places were set with an abundance of food, as if waiting for guests. The eldest said, "How strange! Food, but nobody to eat it? Why shouldn't we?" They ate the food, and being tired, looked around for a place to rest. They went to another room and saw 11 beds. "Enough for us." And they all lay down, but the youngest, who first knelt to pray. "God, please forgive me, but I feel something strange here. Watch over us and protect us." He then lay down and went to sleep too. Near midnight, they were all awakened by music and saw 11 ladies approaching, all princesses and all dressed beautifully in black. "Who are you, and why are you here?" they asked. "We are wandering over the world. There are 11 of us with one sister, and we are going to find our sister's fortune to give her a good dowry." The lady said, "There are 11 of us, and if you do what we want, it will go well with you." Then they asked this and asked that, but nothing happened. At 12 o'clock, they disappeared. The next day, again the table was set with food for breakfast, dinner, and supper. Everything was ready. That night, the brothers went to bed as before. Near midnight again, a band played music, and the lovely ladies appeared begging them to dance with them. The youngest brother warned, "Do not dance with them, not even one." The brothers listened, and again the ladies disappeared. The youngest of the 11 sisters came to the youngest brother and warned him, "You have refrained, held off from temptation for 2 nights, but it is on the 3rd night the test will come." The 3rd night the ladies came to the brothers again and lay down beside them. The youngest brother, being a God-fearing man, warned his brothers to leave them alone. "Do not even think evil," he said. "Refrain from touching them." The ladies lay down beside the men, and the older brothers whispered among themselves, "What does our youngest brother know? He is so young and innocent. We do not have to do as he says." This thought had no more than passed through their minds when the ladies disappeared into nothingness. 10 of the brothers, the ones who had thought evil, turned to stone, stiff as posts in their beds. The youngest brother saw this and felt strange. The youngest sister came to him and said, "If you want me, you will have to go out in the world and find me." So the youngest brother went out, hunting for the princess. He went here and there. In one place, near a cave, stood a big man, a giant, who said to the boy, "Where are you going, little man?" "I am hunting a princess. How can I find her?" And the giant replied, "There is a princess in this cave." The youngest brother went into the cave and searched all over, but did not find her. "Did you see anything?" asked the giant. "Nothing except a big pile of gold." "You may go and help yourself to the gold." "How can I carry it? It's of no use to me." Well, come and I'll help you. Get on my back and I'll carry you, and we will go together." They came to a place where they saw a very fat man, big like a barrel. "Where are you going? Where are you going?" the giant asked him. "Where am I going? Well, I am just wandering over the world. And you?" "We are wanderers too. Why not come with us and be our friend?" They went along together and met another man whose eyes were blindfolded. They asked him why he went around with his eyes covered. He replied, "If my eyes were not tied up and I looked on a stone, it would turn to powder. The youngest brother said, "Since you see so well to get around with your eyes blindfolded, perhaps you will be good enough to tell me where my princess is hiding. You could see." The blindfolded man, who was called Sharp Eyes, looked about him and into the distance far, far away. Then he said, "Oh, she is far away in a strange castle. I see 10 others with her, imprisoned in a glass castle." The younger brother turned to the giant. Do you think you could carry us all on the journey to the castle where the princess is?" The giant nodded. "Oh, yes, I can easily carry you all. Get on my back." So he gathered up the youngest brother, the fat man, and the blindfolded man on his back, and took such long steps that he covered a mile at a step. They covered much ground, but nightfall, so they had to rest and sleep. There came to them a little withered old man, and they asked him how to get to the castle. He shook his head. "There is nothing you can do to get into that castle. Everyone who ever tried disappeared and was never heard of again. Everything that is taken in is never seen again." The fat man said, "Show me how to get there. I will blow myself up and stand guard in the doorway, so that not even an ant can pass me." The giant said, I will stand over the roof of the castle. Whoever goes in or out, I can see him." Sharp Eyes, the blindfolded man, said, If I look at him, he'll turn to dust." The 11 princesses were in the glassed-in castle and sat around talking and laughing. They could be seen but could not get out. They were like pictures in that they could not talk back, and they seemed to be holding pictures. The youngest brother saw his princess, the youngest one there with the others. The old man warned them all not to touch the princesses. The 11 brothers, all but the youngest, were still like stone in a faraway castle, but the princesses seemed to have found pictures of all of them. Each princess held and smiled at the picture of the brother of her choice. The next day, the youngest brother said, "I cannot see the youngest princess." He turned to the giant. "You were standing over the roof of the castle. Did you see where she went?" "No," said the giant. The youngest brother was disappointed and angry. "You don't know anything and can't do anything," he said. "Wait a minute," Sharp Eyes said. "I will look. Unbind my eyes. I will see where she is." So they untied his eyes, and he looked, and far away in the woods he saw a dove. He told the youngest brother he must go and get it and return before sunrise. The youngest brother turned to the giant. "Will you take me there?" "Of course," said the giant. "Get on my back, and away we'll go." The youngest brother got on the giant's back, and the giant took big, long steps. 1, 2, 3, and they were in the woods. The youngest brother grabbed the dove, and they rushed back with the dove in his arms. Next day, the watchman, the good giant, said to the youngest brother, "Didn't you bring back the dove? Is everything there?" "Yes, I did," said the youngest brother. Then he saw his princess in the castle, dressed in white to the waist, as all the other princesses were. Up until this time, they had all been dressed in black. "One night has gone well," the youngest princess said. "Now another night is to go by." During the day, the princess again disappeared. Sharp Eyes looked for her again and saw her turned into a stone tiny as a grain of rice. The good giant again took the youngest brother and Sharp Eyes on his back, and they went to get this small stone, which was the princess. They had to get back before sunrise, and did, after which they let her go. When they saw the princess in person, she and her sisters were dressed in white to their knees. The third day, she disappeared again. The youngest brother appealed to Sharp Eyes, "Will you help me look for her again?" Sharp Eyes said, "I am looking and looking, but I don't see her." "We must find her before sunrise," the youngest brother said. "If we don't find her, we will all become prisoners." Sharp Eyes looked and looked hard, and saw the princess now turned into a fish in a lake. The youngest brother turned to the fat man. "You can hold so much. You come with us and drink the water out of the lake so I can catch the fish." The good giant took them on his back, and they went to the lake. The fat man drank and drank and drank until they saw the little princess fish. The youngest brother caught the fish, brought it back, and turned into the princess again. And it turned into the princess again. All the 11 princesses were in white now. They had been freed from a curse that had been put on them. "We thank you for freeing us," they said to the youngest brother. The youngest princess said, "Go to the 11th bed, my bed, in the castle where the brothers are. Under that bed is a well. Get some water out of it and sprinkle it over your brothers, because I have no right to do it." So the youngest brother went to the castle where his brothers were, got some water from the well, sprinkled it over them, and they were all revived to life. The princess and princesses all got married, and a husband was found for the sister, so that there were 12 couples to dance at the wedding. The fat man danced at the wedding too, and the water in his stomach went boom, 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 like a huge drum as he danced. What happened to Sharp Eyes? He is in America now, a trick auto driver. He can steer a car blindfolded between some tiny balls. As for Long Legs, the good giant, he is a watchman now, and always will be. Everybody, story 44, The Axe, the Spade, and the Walnut. Once there was a man who had 3 sons. He was very poor, but he owned a farm. In his only pasture, the farmer had broken his back, digging out boulders. Because he was poor, he sent his 3 sons, Peter, John, and Louis, out into the world to seek their fortunes. Peter and John decided to go to the king's castle because against the castle a great oak had grown up that shut out all the light. No one had been able to cut it down. The king said he would give a rich treasure to anyone who could cut the tree down. But so far, no one was able to do so. The castle, built on a high hill, had no water well. The king offered double the treasure to anyone who could dig a well filled with water. So Peter, John, and Louis set out. They had not gone far before they came to a thick forest. In the distance, they heard a chopping sound. Louis, being a curious type of boy, went to see what it was, while his brothers waited under a tree. He followed the sound on, wandering through the trees until he came to a clearing where an axe was chopping all by itself. The axe told him that it had been waiting for him. Louis took off the handle and put the blade in his pouch, after which he went back to his brothers and they went on. They had not gone far when they came to a steep ledge of rock, and at the top they heard a digging sound. Peter and John wanted to go on, but Louis had to see what it was. He climbed up the cliff, and when he got to the top, he saw a spade digging all by itself. The spade told him it had been waiting for him a long time. Louis again took the spade from the handle and put it in his pouch. He rejoined his brothers, and on they went. After they had traveled some distance, they stopped at a little stream. Louis wondered where the water came from. He decided to follow the stream while his brothers cooled themselves in the shade. Although it was a long distance, he finally found a walnut from which the water was coming. The walnut also told him it had been waiting for him. Louis plugged the hole in the walnut and put it in his pouch. He rejoined his brothers, and they traveled on. It was not long before they came to the castle. Many people had tried to cut the tree down, but no one had succeeded, and the tree kept growing larger. The king now offered half the kingdom and the princess for his wife to anyone who could accomplish the task. First, Peter tried to cut down the tree, but failed. Then John tried and failed. Then it was Louis's turn. He put the handle on the axe and told it to cut down the tree, and it did. He then put the handle on the spade and told it to dig a well, which was done. He then unplugged the walnut and placed it in the well, and the water filled it. The king was so pleased that he gave Louis half the kingdom and the princess for his wife, just as he had promised. All right, story 45, The Golden Duck. The king had a tree with golden apples, and something was taking the apples, but he couldn't find out what it was. He had guards to watch, but because they couldn't catch the thief, he had them put to death or imprisoned. The king had 3 sons, and everyone thought the youngest one was not as smart as his brothers. However, when no one else could catch the thief, he kept watch on this tree and found it was a golden duck that was taking the apples. He caught the duck, but it got away, leaving 2 feathers. The next morning, he took these feathers to the king, his father, and told him what had happened. The king said someone would have to look for the duck and find it wherever it was. So the 2 older brothers got ready, packed a lunch, and started out to look for the golden duck. No one had much confidence in the ability of the youngest son, since he never had much to say for himself, partly because his brothers never gave him a chance. Consequently, he was left at home. The two brothers went on until they came to a hotel with the sign, "Today you pay, tomorrow for nothing." This sounded like a good thing, but one must realize that when tomorrow comes, it is today. In other words, one paid every day. The 2 brothers went into the hotel and started to drink, play cards, make love to girls, and have a good time generally. They had the best of meals and kept drinking and playing cards until they had spent all their money. When their money was gone, the hotel keeper said, "Since you have no money to pay your bill, I'll have to put you in jail and keep you there for a year." And he did. A year passed, and the 2 brothers didn't come back. So the youngest son went to the king and said he would go. The king hated to see him leave, since the other boys hadn't come back, and he was his last son, but he finally agreed to let him go. So the boy got an old plug horse that looked like a scarecrow, took a little bit of money, started out, and came to the same hotel. He too saw the sign that said, "Today you pay, tomorrow for nothing." But he didn't spend all his money the first night. He ate a little, drank a little, and slept a little, not much. He didn't even take a room, just slept on a bench with his horse outside. Nobody bothered him because he looked poor. When nighttime came, the hotel keeper opened up the chimney and picked up an old black man, someone who had not paid his bill and had been put in the chimney and smoked black. After a while, the youngest son said, "Why did you pick up this old man, and why is he black? What happened to him?" And the hotel keeper said, "I've been smoking him up for 7 years. I'm going to smoke him up for 7 more years. 14 years I'm going to smoke him up." He went on to explain that the man owed him money and didn't pay. "How much did he owe?" the youngest brother asked. The hotel keeper told him, and the young man pulled out his money and paid him. Then he said, "Now give me the man's body." The hotel keeper did this, and the youth took the body to the woods, dug a hole, and buried it. Then he started back to the hotel, but the dead man called, "Wait a little bit." Arising from the grave, the dead man came up to the young man and said, "Thank you very much for rescuing me and giving me a proper burial. I'm going to do you a favor for this, anything you want." And the boy said, "Well, that's fine." Then he went back to the hotel, drank some coffee, and ate a little food. The next day he started on his journey to find the golden duck. Soon after he left the hotel, the dead man came up to him and said, "You need a good horse, so I'll turn into one. Would you like me to be a gray horse?" "Yes," the boy said. "How would you like to travel? Would you rather I would fly in the air or gallop along the ground?" The boy said, I'd like for you to take me wherever I have to go as fast as possible, but I'd rather you'd keep me on the ground." They started out, the dead man and the boy, as a horse and rider, and traveled until they came to the palace where the golden duck was. They stopped, and the dead man said, "I'll go over across the road and turn into a stump. And when you're ready to leave, come over and pound on the stump with your switch. In the meantime, you go inside and get the golden duck, but do not take the gate that it's setting on. Open the gate, but leave it there. Go into a hall, and you will see a lot of people, all asleep on guard, so that no one can take the golden duck. Pay no attention to them. Just catch the duck and bring it here, and you'll have no trouble. But don't take anything but the duck." The boy went into the hall and saw a lot of people, all asleep, and outside he saw the golden duck sitting on the gate. The boy looked at the gate, and it was so nice, so artistically made, that he could not resist taking it along too. When he did, the duck cried out, "Help! Somebody is stealing me!" By that time, the guards all awoke, and the servants in the kitchen came out, and the boy was caught. Then the king came out and said, "Well, you're smart. You came here and caught the golden duck all alone. I'll tell you what I'll do. In the next town, there's a horse with a golden tail and a golden mane. He's a beautiful, high-spirited horse, and if you can bring me that horse, I'll give you the golden duck." The boy left and went over and pounded on the stump to tell his friend what had happened. The dead man arose, turned back into a horse, and said, "I told you not to take the gate. The king caught you while you were taking the gate, but I'll help you again. Sit down here, and I'll tell you what to do. And this time, do as I tell you. Take the horse outside, and you will be safe. But if you take the bridle, the king who owns the horse will catch you." It was the same thing again. The boy saw the horse jumping and neighing, a beautiful horse with a golden tail and mane. On the horse was a costly bridle of gold, set with all kinds of stones, diamonds, and every other kind. He thought to himself, "That's too pretty to leave here. I'm going to take the bridle too. I'll catch the horse and leave the bridle on it." Again, the boy was caught. The king who owned the horse caught him and said he was going to kill him. "But," he explained, "I am not going to kill you in the ordinary way. In the next town, there's a girl with golden hair, a princess. If you will bring me this girl, I'll give you the horse, but you'll probably lose your life in trying to do this." The boy went back to the gray horse, and they started on their journey after the princess with the golden hair. When they were almost there, the dead man helper, the gray horse, spoke. "Listen," he said. "When the girl with the golden hair comes down, she will want to kiss and hug you. But don't let her. Slap her as hard as you can on the mouth, then take her hand and go outside. Nobody will bother you if you do as I say." Then he pointed to a picket fence with high stakes. "Do you see that fence of sharp stakes over there? Every stake has a dead man's head on it, all but one. That one is for you. These heads are men who have tried to win the princess with the golden hair but failed. You had better listen to me this time. This is the last time I am going to help you." The boy went inside and saw a lot of people in a large hall. Everyone was sitting down, but nobody said anything. The girl with the golden hair came in and started to put her arms around him, but he slapped her on the mouth, took her hand, and went out where the stump was. The stump, now a gray horse again, said, "All right, sit down." The girl said, "Thank you. You have made me well." The boy sat down by the horse. The next thing was to get the horse with the golden tail from the second king. The horse, the dead man helper, spoke to the boy. "Listen," he said, "when we get almost there, You stay with the girl for a while. I'll make another girl exactly like this one, and you can deliver her to the king and get the magic horse." So that is what they did. Soon after their arrival, a second girl appeared that looked just like the princess with the golden hair. The boy took this girl to the king, who said, "I'm glad," and gave him in return the magic horse and bridle. However, although the girl looked just like the real princess, when she started to kiss the king, she turned into a bear and jumped at him. The boy, the princess, and the dead man helper rode away with the magic horse and bridle. When they reached the palace of the first king, where the golden duck was, the dead man spoke again. "I'm going to turn into a horse with a golden tail and mane and jeweled bridle, just like this one. And you deliver that horse and get the golden duck. And after you have the golden duck, take the girl, horse, and duck and go. Don't wait for anything." So the boy did this. He delivered the horse and bridle to the king, who gave him the golden duck and the gate. The king was well pleased with the horse, which was exactly like the real one, with the golden tail and mane, and which jumped and neighed continually. However, when two dogs passed, chasing a rabbit, the horse turned into an owl and flew into the woods. The king was terribly disappointed and said, "Now I've lost everything." When the dead man came back, he said to the boy, "Now you have the golden duck, the horse with the golden tail and mane, and the princess with the golden hair. But you still have to be on the lookout for trouble. When you come to the next road, you will see a black man, like me, who will try to sell you a pair of shoes, but you must not buy them. Later, a beggar will ask for a piece of bread or something to eat, but you must not give him anything. Keep traveling, and you will come to a place where there is a crowd of people, but you must not go there or even stop. If you do, that will be the end of you." Then the dead man brought a nice saddle and blanket for the magic horse, and the boy and girl rode off with the golden duck. On the road, a black man stopped them and wanted to sell them a pair of shoes. "You have a nice pretty girl," he said. "Why don't you buy a pair of nice shoes for her?" But the girl said, "No, don't buy me any shoes. Remember what the man told you. Don't buy anything." So they went on. Soon a beggar came, asking for a crust of bread. "Please," he said, "I'm hungry. Give me a little piece of bread." But the boy said, "No, I have nothing to give you." Soon he came to the hotel where he had spent the night and left his old horse. He looked for his horse, but couldn't find it. He looked up on the hill and saw a crowd of people and wanted to go up there. But the girl said, "You remember what that man told you. If you go up there where all those people are, you may be killed." But he went anyway. When he got to the top of the hill, he saw that a crowd of people had gathered to watch the hanging of two men, and that the men were his two brothers. When he saw that his two brothers were about to be hanged and found out that it was for debts they owed, they'd been drinking, playing cards, and having a good time generally all this time, he asked how much they owed and paid their debts. Then he started home again, taking his two brothers with him. On the way, one of the brothers said to the other, "What will we do? This boy will tell father everything, and he'll have us put to death probably. We'd better think of a way to do away with him fast somehow." The other brother said, "Yes, but how can you do that?" The first brother said, "Not far from here, there's a well, and when we stop for a drink of water and he goes to draw up the water, I'll push him into the well, and we'll make the girl swear not to tell anybody anything about it." The other brother agreed to this, and when they stopped for a drink and the youngest brother started to pull up the water, the oldest brother pushed him in, and he fell to the bottom of the well. When the brothers asked the girl to swear not to say anything about it to anyone, she said, "All right, I'll swear for a year and 6 days. If in that time the youngest brother doesn't come back, I'll marry someone else. But until that time, I won't marry anyone." They went on home then, the two brothers, taking with them the girl, the horse, and the golden duck. But the girl never laughed or even smiled, and the duck never made any noise at all, and the horse acted as if he were dead. In the meantime, the youngest brother was still alive at the bottom of the well. It was a deep well, and he couldn't get out. A year passed, and all this time an eagle had carried him something to eat every day. Finally, the eagle spoke to him and said, "Listen, try to catch hold of my spoon down there. I'm going to try to take you inside. I'd like to carry you out." But the boy said, "Oh no, you're small. You couldn't carry me." And the eagle said, "I've got lots of power. I'm going to pull you up." After he'd pulled him out of the well, he said, "This time I'm going to give you a violin, and you can play on the violin." And the boy said, "I never could play anything in my life." But the eagle said, "That's all right. I'm going to give you the power to play any kind of music you want. And I'm going to give you pencils and a brush and the ability to paint. You can paint for the king and be the best artist around." When the youngest son was almost home, he went to stay with a poor man, not far from his father's palace. He still had a little money in his pocket, so he could pay him something. The poor man was a shoemaker, and the youngest son offered to help him. The shoemaker was going to make some shoes for the princess with the golden hair, who was now planning to marry one of the older brothers. The boy took an old piece of hide, and although he was not a shoemaker, through magic help, he made a fine shoe, just one, and sent it to the princess by the shoemaker. When the old shoemaker took the shoe into the palace, the duck started to quack and sing. The horse started to jump and neigh, and the girl laughed. The old king asked why everyone was so happy. The girl put on the shoe, and it fit exactly. She liked it so well that she told the shoemaker she wanted another shoe made to match that one, and she wanted the one who made it to bring it in. So the next day, the youngest son came in, bringing the second shoe. When he got there, the duck sang and quacked continually, and the horse reared and plunged and neighed, and the girl laughed almost all the time. The old king said, "There's something strange about all this." Then the youngest son said to him, "What do you think should be done to a man who would kill his own brother for no reason at all, and take all his possessions and pretend that they were his?" The king said, "I don't know what I would do or what should be done." The oldest brother said, "I know what I would do. I'd hitch 4 pairs of horses to such a man, 1 pair to each hand and foot, and drive them off in different directions so that they'd tear him to pieces." The second brother said, "I'd take a block of wood and hang him upside down with a razor attached so that he could be cut to pieces and die a hard death." Then the youngest brother said, "That's what my brothers did to me." He told his father, "I'm your youngest son, and this is my bird, my horse, and my girl. My brothers tried to kill me and thought they had. Then they took them all away from me." The king had 2 pairs of oxen brought in and hitched to the first brother, so that he was killed the way he had suggested, and the second brother, as he had said, with the razor and block of wood. The youngest son married the girl. All right, y'all, this is story 46, The Boy Who Wouldn't Tell His Dream. A boy, 10 or 12 years old, had always taken the sheep to the hills. But one day he wouldn't get up. His mother urged him to get dressed and do his work, but he wouldn't do it. She told his father and he tried, but the boy stayed in bed because he wanted to finish his dream. When he did get up, he told his mother he'd had a dream, but when she didn't say anything, she was supposed to wish him good luck for his dream. He wouldn't tell his dream to her, nor to his father, since neither wished him good luck. So the father got a stick and drove him away. The boy went to live at the home of a rich man who had a daughter about his own age. So the boy and girl played together and had a good time. One day the girl said, "Don't you have a father and mother?" The boy said that he did, but that they had driven him away from home when he wouldn't tell his dream. The girl told her father, and the father asked the boy to tell his dream, but since he didn't wish him good luck, he wouldn't do it. As the father had fed, clothed, and housed the boy for some time now, he was very angry about this and had the boy put down in a dry pit 100 feet deep. The guard didn't want to kill the boy, so he threw food down to him, bread, chicken, meat, and so on. Finally, the guard managed to get a spade and throw it down to the boy, who decided to try to dig himself out. He kept digging and digging, finally saw daylight, but thought he had better wait until dark to get out. When he came out, he found that he was in the same place in the rich man's yard. He climbed the high fence, went into the house, and looking around, saw the girl sleeping. He stepped into the room and kissed her. At first, the girl was angry and threatened to kill him, but finally asked him where he had come from. He told her she couldn't kill him, that probably nobody could. The boy was dirty from digging himself out of the hole and needed a shave and many other things. So the girl hid him, had the guard bring clothes for him, give him a bath, and so on. Nobody but the girl knew the boy was there. One day the girl went to her father and mother and came back to the boy crying. A rich king had threatened to make war upon her father, unless he could tell which was the bottom and top of a stick. The boy had the stick sent in so that he could try it out in water and mark it. He knew the bottom, the heavier part, would sink. The girl took the stick back to her parents the next morning, pretending she had discovered the bottom. The agreement was that nobody was to step outside that morning. The rich king agreed that he couldn't fight on that question, but he sent the father another task. This time he sent a roll of 200 pounds of salt, through which the father was to make a hole. The boy accomplished the task the next morning. Under the same conditions, nobody was to step outside, but putting a knife through the salt and leaving it there. Again, the girl told her father she had done this, and again the rich king had no excuse to fight her father. Then the girl went to her father and confessed that not she, but the boy he had put in the 100-foot hole had done all this, and told him that he knew a lot of other tricks. The father sent for the boy after promising not to harm him, and offered his daughter to him in marriage. However, the boy refused, because the father had not yet said the right thing. When the father wished him good luck for his dream, the boy agreed to marry the daughter, but said he would marry first the white girl, the man's daughter, and then a black girl, the rich king's daughter. The father agreed to this, offering to send thousands of soldiers along to help. But the boy said he wanted to go by himself, which he did. First, he put his ear to the ground, saying he was listening to the grinding of hundreds of pounds of salt being thrown away. A man passing by was frightened by all this and offered to follow the boy, since he had said he was on his way to the palace of the rich king. By other seemingly impossible tricks, such as drinking a river dry, he put his mouth to the water and said, "River, be dry, dry, dry," after which it all disappeared. He got 4 or 5 additional followers. When he came to the palace of the rich king, he said he had come to marry the ruler's daughter, the princess. Everyone was surprised, since he had no army and few followers, and some tasks were set for him to do. First, they killed many camels and brought many pounds of salt, all of which he was to eat. He did, or seemed to do it, possibly by magic powers, and said, "Bring some more, bring some more." By his powers of trickery and magic, by his intelligence and quick thinking, he outwitted them all, performing every task set for him or coming out first in each contest. In a handicap race, in which he had to carry an old woman on his shoulders, he won by the use of 3 tricks or unusual powers: by taking 20-mile steps, by getting one of his opponents drunk so that he slept several hours while the others went on, and by stepping on another man's shoulder and pushing him down in the ground so that he could not move until someone rescued him. Finally, he surrounded the city with water, and the rich king gave up and told him to take the girl and go. The boy did, all by himself. Each of his followers remained where he had found him, and he and the daughter of the rich king went back alone. There he married first the white girl, the rich man's daughter, and then the black girl, the daughter of the rich king, who had threatened to make war on the country. All right, everybody, this is story 47, The Invited Guest. Many years ago, 2 young friends had a very unusual experience. When the 2 were old enough to seek their fortunes, it became necessary for them to go their separate ways. Before they separated, they promised each other that if either should marry, he would invite the other to his wedding. Sometime later, one of the young men, Francis, died, and the other, Marion, was to be married. On his wedding day, Marion kept his promise and went to the grave of his friend to invite him to his wedding. Soon after he had made the invitation, Francis was standing beside him. The two then left for the wedding. After the wedding ceremony, Francis asked Marion to come with him to his wedding, for he too was to be married on that day. The two went directly from one wedding to the other, but the latter took place in a beautiful hall. There was magnificent music in the background which overwhelmed those present. After the musician had played one piece, Francis told Marion that it was time for him to leave, but Marion insisted on another piece and then another. After the conclusion of the third piece, he was persuaded to leave. When he arrived home, he noticed that a great change had taken place in his hometown during his absence. He could not understand the change, for it seemed he had been gone only a short while. He saw a young man along the road and began questioning him. The man did not know who Marion was, nor did he know any of the people about whom he was asked. Marion learned that a story of a man who had left his wedding and had never returned was well known among the residents of the little European town. When he asked the location of the house of this man, he was shown a group of trees and told that the house no longer stood there, for the incident had taken place 300 years earlier. Marion could not believe his ears. Yet it was true. His presence in the beautiful hall had had a strange effect upon him. Every time the musician had played for what seemed only a few minutes, 100 years had passed. It seemed incredible that the magnificence and splendor of the unknown place had had the power to make 100 years seem like a few minutes. But Marion knew that it had happened. All right, story 48, the fate of Frank McKenna. At the hip of one of the mountainous hills that divide the county of Tyrone lived a man named McKenna. This McKenna had two sons, one of whom was in the habit of tracing hares on Sundays whenever there was a fresh fall of snow. His father, it seems, had frequently remonstrated with him about what he considered to be a violation of the Lord's Day, as well as for his general neglect of Mass. The young man, however, though otherwise harmless and inoffensive, was in this matter quite insensible to paternal reproof, and continued to trace whenever labor would allow it. One Christmas morning there was a deep fall of snow, and young McKenna got down his cockstick, a staff much thicker and heavier at one end than at the other, and prepared to set out on his favorite amusement. His father, seeing this, reproved him seriously and insisted that he attend prayers. His enthusiasm for the sport, however, was far stronger than his love of religion, and he refused to be guided by his father's advice. During the argument, the old man got warm, and finding that the son obstinately scorned his authority, knelt down and prayed that if the boy persisted in following his own will, he might never return from his hunting unless as a corpse. The imprecation, which was certainly as harsh as it was impious and senseless, might have startled many a mind. It had no effect, however, upon the son, who is said to have replied that whether he ever returned or not, he was determined on going, and go accordingly he did. He was not alone, however, for it appears that 3 or 4 of the neighboring young men accompanied him. Toward the latter part of the day, the young men followed a larger and darker hare than any of them had ever seen. She kept dodging them bit by bit, leading them to suppose that every succeeding cast of the cockstick would bring her down. It was observed afterward that she also led them into the recesses of the mountains, and that although they tried to turn her course homeward, they could not succeed in doing so. As evening advanced, the companions of McKenna began to feel the folly of pursuing her farther, and to perceive the danger of losing their way in the mountains, should night or a snowstorm come upon them. They therefore proposed to give over the chase and return home. But McKenna would not hear of it. "If you wish to go home, you may," said he. "As for me, I'll never leave the hills till I have her with me." They begged and entreated him to desist and return, but all to no purpose. At length, on finding him invincibly obstinate, they left him pursuing the hare directly into the heart of the mountains, and returned to their respective homes. In the meantime, one of the worst snowstorms ever remembered in that part of the country came on, and the self-willed young man was given up as lost. As soon as the storm was over, the neighbors assembled in a body and proceeded to look for him. The snow, however, had fallen so heavily that not a single footmark could be seen. Nothing but one wide waste of white hills met the eye, wherever they turned. No trace of McKenna was found. His father, now remembering what he had said, was nearly distracted, for although the body had not been found, escape or survival was felt to be impossible. They searched and searched, but to no avail. At length there came a thaw, and the youth's body was found on a snowdrift, lying in a surprising posture within a circle, which he had drawn around him with his cockstick. His prayer book lay open upon his mouth, and his hat was pulled down so as to cover it in his face. It is unnecessary to say that his death and the circumstances surrounding it created a most extraordinary sensation in the community. Now, it so happened that the house nearest the spot where he lay was inhabited by a man named Daly, who was a caretaker. The situation of this house was the most lonely and desolate looking that could be imagined. All this left a deep impression on the minds of the people. An incident is said to have occurred at the funeral in keeping with the wild spirit of the whole melancholy event. During the procession, a large dark-colored hare, which was instantly recognized by those who had been out with McKenna on the hills as the identical one that led him to his fate, is said to have crossed the road about 20 yards or so before the coffin. The story goes that a man struck it on the side with a blow that would have killed any ordinary hare. However, the blow not only did no injury, but occasioned a sound to proceed from the body, resembling the hollow one emitted by an empty barrel when struck. In the meantime, the sensation began to die away in the natural progress of time. Then suddenly a report ran abroad like wildfire that to use the language of the people, Frank McKenna was appearing. One night, about 2 days after the funeral, the daughter of Daly, while lying in bed, saw what appeared to be the likeness of McKenna. She screamed out, and covering her head with the bedclothes, told her father and mother that Frank McKenna was in the house. Although the house was searched, nothing could be found of him. Accordingly, the girl soon fell asleep, and her father attributed what she had seen to fear or some accidental combination of shadows proceeding from the furniture. But the fears of the daughter began to return. Every night at the same hour, McKenna would reappear. Finally, the girl began to become so familiarized with the apparition that she overcame her terror sufficiently to venture to address it. She asked why he chose to appear to her instead of his own family. The ghost answered that he was not allowed to speak with any of his friends, for he had parted with them in anger. He said that they were quarreling about his breeches, a new pair that he had had made for Christmas Day, but he thought the old ones would do better, and didn't put the new pair on. He said his reason for appearing was for her to tell his friends that none of them were to wear them. The pants must be given to charity. These words were communicated to the family. The conversations between the ghost and the girl now became not only frequent, but also quite friendly and familiar. The Daly's place became a favorite haunt of his. The whole neighborhood was now in a state of commotion with this story of the apparition, and persons incited by curiosity began to visit the girl, in order to satisfy themselves of the truth of what they had heard. So the spot where the body of McKenna was found is now marked by a little heap of stones, which has been collected since the melancholy event of his death. Every person who passes it throws a stone upon the heap. But but why this is practiced or what it means is not known, unless it is simply to mark the spot as a visible means of preserving the memory of the occurrence. All right, everybody, this is story 49, The Corpse That Wouldn't Stay Buried. It was the custom of Czechoslovakia for young men to go into the army at the age of 21 and serve for 6 years. A young man named Philip had served but 3 years when he was killed. His body was returned home and properly buried in the cemetery. The next day, the caretaker found the grave open and the open coffin beside it, as if it had never been buried. This was very strange, and many people wondered about it. The priest and the caretaker reburied the soldier, but the next day the same thing happened. After the third time, the caretaker put the coffin in the cottage where he kept his tools and equipment. Time went on, and people no longer talked of the soldier who would not stay buried. The caretaker had a hen, and she went every day to the cottage, flew up to the coffin, and laid an egg beside the feet of the soldier. When the caretaker wanted to take the eggs, a voice spoke up. "Leave them alone. They are not to be taken yet." This frightened him, and he left them alone. He even made jokes about this soldier who would not remain buried and yet kept eggs for himself, even though he could not eat them. There lived in the village a very pretty and popular girl, young Philip, and she had been very much in love. After he had gone into the army, she was courted by many suitors. She was very sad when she learned of his death, but in time let herself be persuaded by her mother and father to marry someone else. As was the custom, everyone in the village was invited to the wedding feast to partake of the music, dancing, drink, and food. At such times, there was always much gaiety and also much foolishness, but all in good fun, for everyone was happy at a wedding. When the bride and groom returned from church, many of the older guests were already warm with wine. Almost everyone was full of jests, and one man got up and challenged anyone to go to the caretaker's cottage and get the eggs from the dead soldier. One man, who had had more wine than the others and was already unsteady on his feet, accepted the challenge. All the guests clapped their hands and urged him on. A wager of drinks was set up, and he left. At the caretaker's cottage, he started to put the eggs into his hat when a voice spoke up, as if from the soldier. Although he did not see the lips move, "Since you take the eggs to the wedding, you will have to take me too." Thinking this a jest, the man answered boldly, "Why not? There's always room for more at a feast. Put your arms around my neck, and I'll carry you." And he did. When the drunken guest reached the bride's home, he left the soldier outside, propped up against the wall by the door, where he stood stiff and tall, his eyes closed as if he were a sentry asleep at his post. Only one arm moved out a little. The drunken guest took the hat full of eggs to his fellow conspirators, won the bet of extra drinks and applause, and was quite content. But the soldier at the door put a hush on the festivity, and some of the guests did not speak kindly of the man who had brought him there. He told them that the soldier had asked him to bring him, so he could do nothing else. Everyone knew that there must be some reason that the soldier would not remain buried, that his soul was not at peace, and speculated about what unfinished deed was troubling him so that he could not rest. Finally, the priest, who was also at the wedding, asked that everyone pray for the release of the poor soldier's soul, so that he could go back to the grave where he belonged. But after the amen, the soldier still stood there, stiff and straight, and would swing out his arm as if wanting to shake hands. The priest said perhaps the soldier wanted to bid farewell to all his good neighbors and friends, So everyone lined up and went by and shook hands with the soldier. The bride was last. She was very pale. She knew why he was there, but still had not said anything. When she put her hand into the soldier's, he clasped it tight and would not let it go. Finally, with great weeping, she confessed that she and Philip had made a vow to marry only each other, and she had broken the vow by marrying someone else. Still, the soldier would not let go of her hand. The priest thought a moment and said, "Very well, you made your vow. You can still keep it. I shall say the marriage vows over you here and now." And thus it was. When the final amen was said, the soldier let go of the bride's hand and vanished in the twinkling of an eye, as if he had never been there. When the guests went to the caretaker's cottage, they found that the coffin and body were gone. The open grave was filled up, and even a fine sod covered it. The soldier's soul was finally at rest. Here we go, guys. Story 50, A Visit from the Dead. In the latter part of the 19th century, in the small town of Frascati, which was located on the outskirts of Rome, lived my maternal great-aunt Mary and her family. Aunt Mary, I have been told, was an unusually kind-hearted person and a devoted mother. On sunny days, she could often be seen in the vineyards with her husband and 3 little daughters, laughing and working in a kind of ideal family setting. All this was before the plague struck the small town of Frascati. Before the next 3 months had passed, my great-aunt suddenly became a victim of this killing fever, and within a short time died. 2 years after her death, my great-uncle Joseph, who was still sick with grief, remarried mainly for the sake of his 3 motherless little girls. Although his new life was healthy and hard-working, she seemed to lack Aunt Mary's kindness, which was quickly sensed by the children. After Uncle Joseph left to tend his vineyards each morning, the stepmother dressed up, locked the food in a smoke room, and went to town for the day. She left the little girls all by themselves from late morning to early evening with neither food nor water. They dared not tell my uncle because their stepmother would only have punished them more cruelly. One evening, upon her return from town, the stepmother found some food had been taken from the smokehouse. Also, she noticed that her little stepdaughters had been cleaned up and well fed. She knew that they had not taken the food themselves because the youngest girl was only 2 years old and the oldest, although she was 5, was crippled. When she asked the little girls how they had managed to reach the food, they told her that their mother had come and prepared their meal. After the stepmother had heard their story, she punished them harshly and vowed to hide the food more securely. The next morning, she hid the supplies in a secret place before she left, but upon her return again found that food had been prepared for the children. Now she knew that surely someone must have been feeding her stepdaughters each day, and she decided to see who it was. The next morning, instead of going to town, the stepmother hid in the old barn behind the house. She waited and waited, but she saw no one enter the home. Suddenly, she heard laughter coming from within the walls. She quickly ran to the door and stood listening to the conversation inside the room. Were her ears playing tricks on her? She knew that the voice she heard must have been a product of her imagination, because the voice sounded like the girl's mother. But she was dead. Caught by curiosity and emotion, she pushed the door open and entered the room. There before her stood the little girl's mother, Aunt Mary. I have been told, warned her never to treat the girls cruelly again. The stepmother, seized by fear, turned to run, and as she did, this ghostly figure grabbed her arm, leaving a branded M in remembrance of the warning. That very evening, the stepmother packed her clothes and was never seen by Uncle Joseph again. I have been told that she wandered from place to place in Italy the rest of her life, telling the story of her strange experience. Although many people have concluded that her feeling of guilt concerning the little girls might have made her imagine the vision, of my great aunt. No one in my family to this day has ever explained the branded M on her arm. Story 51, y'all. King Neptune's Diamonds. There once was an old man who lived with his son in a deep forest. They lived in a log cabin not far from a lake, which the man said was haunted. He warned his son not to go near it, as he might get killed. The boy wandered far and wide, but never went near the lake. He had a swimming hole where he could catch fish, so the lake was not too much temptation. Wherever he went, he carried a heavy club, the only weapon he had. Several times a bear had attacked him, but he always beat it off with the club. The bears in the vicinity knew him and avoided him. He loved the young bear cubs and loved to play with them. He was 24 years old and stronger than any bear in the forest. Many times he walked without his club. The bears knew him and did not bother him. He was the king of the forest. One nice morning, he thought to himself, why shouldn't I go near the lake? What have I got to be afraid of? Father wouldn't need to know. Taking his favorite club, he walked toward the forbidden spot. About 20 feet from the water's edge, he sat down on a rock and watched the lake. It was beautiful. The sun was about man-high in the sky and reflected beautifully in the water. What a nice place to swim, he thought. He took his clothes off and started for the water. All at once, something popped out of the lake. With a kind of grunt, it splashed from the water and walked toward him. The boy jumped back, got his club, and patiently waited for the ugly figure to charge. It was smaller than a bear and had a curious club with 3 sharp points on the end in its hands. The boy stood as still as a statue, awaiting the attack. The monster edged foot by foot toward him. It had long whiskers that came almost to its knees and black, piercing eyes. Like a tiger, it sprang at the youth, striking with the fork-like club. At the same time, the boy brought down his club with such force that it struck his opponent's weapon with his hands and broke his own club in half. In surprise, the half-fish stopped in his tracks. For a moment, the two eyed each other. Then, the half-man, half-fish jumped on the boy. They grappled and rolled, but the boy could not get hold of the cricket-like creature. It was wet and slimy like a fish. In the meantime, the sun was getting hotter, and the monster was getting drier. By noon, he was dry and tired out. The boy grabbed him by the neck and held him down, helpless. The figure quivered under the boy's strength. "Please let me go," he cried. "Not so fast. Tell me who you are." "I am King Neptune. I live in the lake. On the bottom is my castle. If you will let me go free, I will repay you 1,000,000 times. All the treasure on the bottom of the sea is mine. I will bring you as many diamonds as you can carry." "How do I know you are telling the truth and will come back at all? How do I know but what next time you will ambush me and kill me?" "What?" cried the creature. "I am a king, and a king never goes back on his word. And I promise that I will never hurt human beings again." "I'll take your word," and the boy let King Neptune go free. The king got up, shook his hands with the boy, and said, "I'll be back in half an hour." "Good," said the boy. "I'll wait for you." The scaly man jumped into the lake to get the diamonds. The boy jumped into the lake also to wash the mud from his body. When he was clean, he put his clothes on again and waited for the sea king. In a few minutes, there was a disturbance on the lake, and the king appeared. He had a bag in his hands as big as a young bear cub. "Here are the diamonds." He gave the bag to the boy and jumped back into the lake. Nobody ever saw him again. The boy was curious. He opened the bag, thrust his hand in it, and brought out a handful of precious stones. He looked at them, and thinking they were candies, put one in his mouth. "Bah!" He spit it out. "Shiny rocks. Such things are for babies to play with. I could choke that creature and feed his body to the fishes." He put the bag of diamonds on his shoulder and started toward home. When he came to the wood shanty, he threw the bag on the wood pile and went into the house. "Where have you been all this time?" the old man asked. "I was playing with some young bear cubs I found this morning. I was thinking that tomorrow I would take you to town, a place you've never been, and buy you anything you want. You are a good boy, and sooner or later you will have to see the world." Early the next morning, they saddled their horses and rode out of the woods together. When they came to the end of the forest, the sun was high in the sky. Some distance ahead, there was a big stone house where some rich man lived. "Is that the town?" the boy asked. "No, son, that is only a house. It's pretty," the boy said. He stopped his horse and looked at the pretty white house. At that moment, something very beautiful appeared at the door. It had on a white dress and had pretty red cheeks. "Hello," it said with a smile. The boy stared with amazement at the apparition. Then he spurred his horse and shot like an arrow to his father. "Father, you said that you'd buy me anything I wanted." "Yes, I will," the old man said. "What do you want?" "I'll show you what I want." He galloped back to the door and pointed at the girl. "See, father, buy me this." The astonished girl ran into the house. She didn't know what this was all about. The old man was puzzled too. "I don't know, son. Nobody can buy that, probably, but I'll try. Let's go into town now. Maybe you'll like something better there." When they got into town, the father showed him pretty gold watches, rings, all kinds of toys, musical instruments, and everything the old man could think of. "No, father, I don't want anything like that. If you don't want to buy me what we saw on the doorstep, I don't want anything else." With a heavy heart, the old man rode out of town with his son. When they came to the White House, the boy got down from his horse. "Come on, father. Don't be like King Neptune. Keep your word." "All right, son. I'll see what I can do." The old man knocked at the door. In a moment, the door was opened by the girl, who asked, "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to see your father," the old man answered. "He's in the hall. Would you come in?" "Father, someone wants to see you." The door opened and a well-dressed man appeared. He had a diamond-studded pin in his necktie, as big as a grain of corn, and a diamond ring on his finger. "I'd like to talk to you in private," said the old woodsman. "Of course. Come into the hall." When the forester explained his visit, the rich man laughed. "Your son is a fine lad, but you're just a working man, and my daughter is not used to work. You see, it couldn't be done." When the old man came out of the hall, he looked 10 years older. "What's wrong, father?" the boy asked. "Well, if I had as many diamonds as he has, then I could buy what you want." "The shiny stones. How many do you need?" "Oh, a handful," the old man answered. "That's easy," said the boy. "I'll bring 1,000 of them. Wait here. I'll be back before dark." The lad did not wait for an answer. He jumped on his horse and shot like lightning into the forest. For 2 long hours, the old man waited and worried. He didn't know what to think of his son. At last, he heard the drumming of hoofbeats. The boy dismounted and handed a bag to his father. "Here, father. Shiny stones. Lots of them." Together, the two fathers examined the bag of diamonds. The next day, a big wedding was held. Everybody was happy, especially the old forester, because he was able to buy his son what he wanted most. All right, y'all, story 52, The Three Godfathers. One time, 3 godfathers went out to look for a place where somebody had buried money. 2 of the godfathers said, "Let's go dig for the treasure." But the 3rd godfather wouldn't go. The others coaxed him, but he still wouldn't go. He went on home and went to sleep. The 2 others went and dug until the middle of the night and found a big snake. They decided to go home. So they killed the snake and took it with them. Before they reached the 3rd godfather's house, one of them said, "Let's throw the snake into his house." There was a little door where the cat could get in and out, so they threw the snake in through the door. When the 3rd godfather woke up, he saw a bright shining light made by a golden snake. In the morning, he took the snake to the city to find out what it was worth. The jeweler said $60,000. So the godfather sold it and went home. He asked his wife if the others had been there, and she said they hadn't, so he told her not to tell them about it. The 2nd godfather was worried. The godfather who got the gold started to improve his house and seemed to have plenty of money, and he had never said a word about the snake they had dug up and thrown into his house. Finally, the second godfather asked him, "How did you get the money to do the things you do?" The third godfather said, "Do you remember when you went out to dig for a treasure?" The second godfather said he did. "That night my room shone like gold when I woke up, and when I went where the light was, I found a golden snake." The second godfather said, "I threw that snake in there. We found it when we went to dig for the treasure. We dug till the middle of the night and found only that snake. So we threw it in your place and went home." And that's how luck was missed by the first two godfathers, but came to the third one. Story 53, Blind Wolf. This all happened a long time ago. I don't know how many 100 years ago, but one man was so poor he could hardly get along, always poor. He had a woman who said, "Well, man, what are you going to do? I'm poor and you're poor all the time. What are you going to do about it?" "Well," the man said, "God did that. I can't help it. You know poor is poor." He went to the village, and at the village he was given some kind of stock, a calf or cow, a lamb or sheep, something. Every year somebody gave him some kind of seed, some kind of drink, and some kind of stock. And every day he would go out and take care of the sheep. One day he took the sheep to the top of the hill when he wanted to take them home so the woman could get the milk. One sheep didn't want to go, but kept trying to go down the creek bottom. He thought to himself, is that sheep crazy? Where is he going? I'm going to follow it." He followed the sheep down to the bottom of the creek. There was a wolf down there, and the sheep lay down beside it so that it could have some of her milk. And it did. The man looked at the wolf and saw it was blind. Then he took his sheep and other stock home. He threw his stick away and lay down on the bed. He said, "I saw a blind wolf. I'm not going to work any more." He lay there on the bed, and after a while the woman came in and said, "Man, get up. All the rest have put their sheep and lambs and cattle outside." He said, "No, woman, I'm not going to do it. I saw a blind wolf." The woman said, "You're not going to do it. Are you going to stay hungry?" "Oh," he said, "I saw a blind wolf." He wouldn't go, so the woman went herself. Down at the creek, she saw a nice, smooth stone. She thought to herself, "I like that stone." Lifting the stone, she saw that underneath it was a container of gold, a big pot full of gold. She was terribly excited. She put the top back and wondered what to do. "I can't take it home," she thought. She took the stock to graze, and when she got home, the man was still lying on the bed. She said, "Hey man, get up. I've found a lot of gold. God gave it to me." She knew where the gold was, of course. The man said, "Don't bother me, woman. I saw a blind wolf. Don't bother me. I say, don't bother me." She said, "What's the matter with you? There's lots of gold. Come on now. Get up and go and bring it home." He said, "No, I'm not going to do it. I saw a blind wolf." The woman went to the neighbor's house next door and said, "Neighbor, will you go with me and help me? My man won't go. There's gold. I've found a pot full of gold, but I can't bring it home. I'll show you where it is. If you'll take a sack and fill it and bring it home, then you can have half and I'll take half." The neighbor man agreed to this, and the two went for the gold. But the husband just lay there on the bed. He wouldn't get up. They found the rock and the pot of gold, and the man filled the sack, put it on his shoulder, and carried it home. When they were almost there, he said, "Woman, I'll take the gold over to my house, the whole sack. You go and tell your man to come, and we'll divide it up." The woman said, "All right." So the neighbor man took the gold home. He wanted to steal that gold and started to open the sack before the man got there. He thought that he would get all that he could. He opened the sack, and the sack was full of snakes. He said, "Tighten up, tighten up." The snakes were about to crawl all over the house and kill everybody. "Tighten up," he said, and he pulled the drawstrings. The woman had gone over to tell her husband. She said, "Man, get up. Go over to the next house and divide up the gold." He said, "Woman, don't bother me. I saw a blind wolf." About that time, the neighbor had picked up the sack, carried it over to his neighbors, and poured the whole thing into the window, cursing as he did so. But as he poured the contents of the sack out, it was all gold again. The husband saw this and said, "I told you, I saw a blind wolf." Now that he was rich, there was no need to do anything but have a good time. All right, story 54, The Fortune Teller. Once there were two brothers who lived with their father on a small farm in Italy. Everyone was happy until the father died. In his will, he said that half of his farm would go to one son and the other half to the other. The eldest son was named Bird and the youngest Grasshopper. Everything was going fine until Grasshopper noticed one day that his part of the wheat was dying. He didn't know what was causing this, so one night he told his brother that he was going out into the field to see what was happening to his half of the farm. Each man had a woman who was supposed to take the weeds out of the wheat each night. The woman that Bird had was a good worker, but when she pulled the weeds from the wheat, she would put them on Grasshopper's land. Since Grasshopper had a lazy woman, she did not clean out the wheat, but would go to sleep under a big tree every night. When the young man saw this, he was angry and told her to leave. The woman, not having anywhere to go, had to think of something fast. She told him that she did not clean out the wheat because he was not meant to be a farmer, but a fortune teller. Grasshopper told her that he knew nothing about fortune telling, but if that was what he was supposed to do, he would try. The next day, Grasshopper got ready to go to the town to become a fortune teller. On his way, he saw the king out fox hunting. The king, seeing him, asked where he was going. Grasshopper put his head down and told the king that he was going to the town to become a fortune teller. While the young man had his head down, the king caught a grasshopper on a tree limb and held it in his hand. The king said, "So you want to become a fortune teller? Well, if you can tell my fortune, I will believe you." When the king said this, Grasshopper didn't know what to do. He put his head down and started to pray, but it was mostly muttering. He was saying to himself, "Poor Grasshopper, what are you going to do now?" When the king heard this, he thought he was talking to the insect he held. Since he knew that Grasshopper didn't know what he had in his hand, he said, "You must have some special power. Come to the palace with me." When they got to the palace, the king told the youth that the queen was going to have a baby and asked if he could tell whether it would be a boy or a girl. Grasshopper didn't know what to do, for he knew nothing about fortune telling. Finally, after worrying all day, he thought, "If I tell the king that I will have to see the queen without any clothes on, she will say no, and that will end it." The queen did say no, but the king decided she must do as the youth said. When Grasshopper looked at her from the front, he said, "Well, it looks like a girl." But when he looked at her from the back, he said, "Still, it looks like a boy." It just so happened that the queen had twins, one boy and one girl. Grasshopper lived happily with the king and queen for the rest of his life. All right, episode 55, The Dream. About 5 o'clock in the morning, Miss Lopez was telling her husband about a dream that she had had that night. She dreamed that someone told her to dig behind the little country church in their town, and there she would find great quantities of money. However, her husband did not think that this was possible. Two men who came for Mr. Lopez to go to work in the morning stood behind the door listening to what his wife said. They decided to investigate and immediately turned back and went to this church. There they dug for some time and found many snail shells, but didn't find the money Miss Lopez had talked about. They thought therefore that she was just playing a joke on them. The two men took the several bushels of shells they had found and went to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Lopez while they were sleeping. They climbed to the roof and made a hole big enough to throw the shells down. The shells fell on the bed where Mr. and Mrs. Lopez lay, And when they landed, they all turned into money. Mr. Lopez didn't know what happened. He couldn't understand it at all. But Miss Lopez said, "See, this is the money I was telling you about." Episode 56, Christ and the Blacksmith. One time where there was a blacksmith who wanted to be called master above all the other masters. He wanted to be called headmaster and was insulted if anybody said master. This was during the time that Christ was traveling the world. So one day, Christ came along and said, "Good morning, master." And the blacksmith said, "Who are you?" "Get out of here." "What is your title?" Christ asked. "Headmaster," the blacksmith said. "Do you think you deserve that title?" "Yes," said the blacksmith. "I can do more than anyone at my trade." Christ intimated that he might be able to do more. The blacksmith said, "You'll have to prove it." Christ took up an old man, put him in the fire until his flesh was burned off, then put him on the anvil and started to beat him with a cane. Then, flash, a young man came out. "Can you do that?" Christ said. The blacksmith said, "I've got my dad. I'll make a young man out of him. If you can do it, I can do it better." He dragged the old man down, put him on the fire to burn, and waited. When only a few bones were left, he put him on the anvil and started to beat him with the cane, but nothing happened. All right, story 57, The Boy Who Made a Trip to Hell. There once lived a poor peasant with his wife on a small farm. He was so poor he did not even have an ox to plow with, but dug all his ground with a mattock. One day, while he swung the mattock on the hard ground, a well-dressed stranger came along. He had a gold watch and heavy chain that shone like the sun. "Why don't you plow?" he asked. "Digging all this ground with a mattock is too hard on your back." The poor man stood speechless, gazing open-mouthed at the intruder's spotless clothes. "What else can I do? I have no ox and no money to buy one." "Oh," said the stranger, "there's lots of money. What you have to do is sell something." "I have nothing to sell." "Yes, you have. I'll give you all the money you can carry for the thing that you don't know you have." The poor man was puzzled. What could it be that he would not know about? Everything he had ran through in his mind. "All right, mister. There isn't a thing I wouldn't know. You can have whatever you want if you'll give me the money." "Wait a minute," said the rich man. "You sign this paper, and the sack that is behind me is yours." He stepped aside, and the poor man saw a burlap sack full of bills. Surprised beyond words, he thought, "What a life I would have if I owned that sack." Then he said aloud, "I'd be only too glad to sign, but I can't write." "That's all right. Just put X on it, like this one. But don't make it like a cross. I don't like crosses." "All right. I'll make 10 X's for that sack if you want me to." "Oh, no. One will be enough." When he made the sign, the stranger handed over the sack of money and said, "After 7 years, I'll come back and get the thing that you don't know you have." "All right. You're welcome to it." The poor peasant put the sack on his shoulders and started toward the house, as happy as he had ever been. Rebecca, oh Rebecca! Where could she be? She always waited for him on the bench outside the house. Probably she was busy setting the table for supper. He could hardly wait to see her face when he showed her the money. Like a young goat, he rushed through the door. "Look what I've got, Rebecca. All this sack full of bills is ours." And he grabbed her with both hands. "Look, all ours. Where did you get that?" "Oh, some crazy man came and bought something of me that I didn't know I had, and after 7 years he will come and get it. And for that, the fool gave me all this money." Then he heard a muffled cry. "What's that?" "That is your son you didn't know you had," the wife said. "And that was the devil that bought him from you. What are we going to do now?" The years passed, and the little baby grew into a husky boy and started to school. Every time his mother gave him his lunch for school, she cried. One day he said, "Mama, Why do you cry every time you give me the lunch for school? If it is so hard on you, I can go without lunch." "Oh, no, it is not the lunch." And then she told him all that had happened. "Well, Mama," he said, "don't cry. Something might happen to make everything all right." By this time, he was 6.5 years old. On the way to school, he passed a little chapel, in which was the statue of the Madonna and the little baby Jesus. The statue of Jesus held in one hand a little ball that represented the world. Every day he passed the chapel, he knelt down and prayed. One day before his 7th birthday, he prayed as usual, and to his surprise, the Madonna stepped down from the altar, took the ball from the little Jesus' hand, and gave it to him. "Throw this ball on the ground," she said. "The ball will roll, and you must follow. When you come to hell, demand the agreement that your father signed. You will be free when you get the paper. In case the devil will not give it to you, show him this ball and tell him that you will destroy his hell and all the devils if he doesn't. Don't be afraid of him. Go, and good luck." The boy gladly took the ball and threw it as he had been told. When it hit the ground, all the world was shaken. The ball rolled, and the boy followed across mountains and canyons and deserts. In a great hollow in the middle of a dark woods, he met a man dressed in armor from head to toe. "Hello, little boy," he said. "Where are you going?" "I am going to hell after my father's agreement." And he told him all about it. "Will you ask him if he's got my name? My name is Nick." The boy said that he would, and told him to wait there for him. Then the ball started rolling, and the boy followed. When they came to an iron door, the ball bumped against it with a force that shook all hell, burst the heavy door off the hinges, and frightened the devils out of their wits. The big boss jumped out with only one horn on his head. The other one had been knocked off when the ball struck the door. He saw the boy with the ball, which he had picked up after it had struck the hell door, as instructed by the Madonna, in his hand. What are you doing with that ball? Get away from here. We don't like that ball," he yelled. "I am not going away before I get the agreement my father signed nearly 7 years ago," the boy said. "Oh, yes," said the devil. I know now who you are. I was the one who bought you, and tomorrow I will come and get you." "Oh, no, you won't. If you don't give me the agreement, I'll throw this ball at your hell and destroy it completely together with all your devils." "No, no, no," cried the one-horned devil. "I'll give you the agreement back. Just hold the ball, please. I'll be back in a minute." He ran back to his desk, grabbed the agreement, and came back in almost no time. "Here is your agreement. Now please go. I will never bother you." "Wait a minute," said the boy. "That's not all I want. I met Nick on the way. You know the man in armor who lives in the dark woods? He wants to know if you have his name here." "Wait, I'll have to look at the scroll." He brought out the lengthy list and looked to see if he had any Nick. "Yes, here it is. He is mine for sure. He killed 99 men. How could he be saved?" "You know," said the boy. "Of course I know. Tell him to take a dead limb of an apple tree, go to the graveyard at midnight, stick the limb in the ground, and kneel and pray until the limb sprouts and starts to grow." "Ha ha ha!" And the devil laughed loudly. The boy turned around and started back home. When he came to the dark woods, he met old Nick and told him what the devil had said. "All right, my boy," Nick said. "Thank you very much. I'll try that." He found a dead, dry limb of an apple tree, and at midnight went to the graveyard, stuck the limb in the soft earth, knelt down, and started to pray. Time passed. The clock struck 1. Then he saw something moving. He listened. Somebody was digging. "It's a ghost," he thought to himself. "Let it dig." Nick kept on praying. The ghost got angry at something and started swearing. Nick stopped praying and listened a little more carefully. "That's not a ghost. That's no ghost," he thought. "Ghosts don't swear. It's a grave robber, stealing a corpse. Well, I've killed 99 men already. This will make 100 even." Nick aimed and fired, and to his surprise, the dead limb immediately turned green, bloomed, and bore 3 apples, for the good deed that Nick had done in killing the grave robber. God had forgiven him for the previous 99 killings. If you go in a Catholic church where they have a Saint Nick, You will see he has 3 apples on his book. These are the apples that he picked at the graveyard the night he killed the grave robber. All right, story 58. He walked on earth. One morning, a long time ago, in a small village, an old man came walking into town. He had on shabby clothes and wore a long beard. His cane was crooked, and his slippers were full of holes. As he came to the center of the village, he saw a stream. He went to the stream, sat down, and put his feet into the water. He didn't even bother to take off his slippers. He sat there for a while, and a little girl came up to him. "Hello," she said, and he answered with a hello back. Then he asked the little girl to wash his tired feet. "No, I will not wash your dirty old feet," she answered. "Why?" the old man asked. The little girl ran away as fast as she could. Apparently, she was afraid of him. About 10 minutes later, another little girl came up to the old man. "Hello, sir," she said. "Hello, little girl," the old man answered with a smile one could hardly see because of his long beard. He asked the little girl if she would wash his feet. She said, "Yes, sir, I'll wash your feet." So the little girl started. She took off the old man's slippers and washed his feet very gently, taking care not to hurt his tired feet. When the old man offered her a dime, she said she didn't want the money and walked away. Then the old man disappeared and wasn't seen any more. A few days later, the little girl who wouldn't wash the old man's feet died. No one knows how or why. Some people say that the old man was Jesus. The old folks say that Jesus walked the earth a long time ago as a beggar. Story 59, The Beggar's Bread. There was once a poor man who went about asking for something to eat. One woman became tired of him coming around begging for food, money, and clothes all the time, and although she never gave him anything, she decided to put an end to it. The next time she baked bread, she made one nice small loaf, and within this loaf she put some poison. Soon after this, the poor man came to her house again begging for some food. He was surprised to receive a loaf of bread from the woman and very happy about it. He took the bread home, and because it was such a nice loaf of bread, he decided to save it and eat his old bread first. That night, there was a severe storm, and a soldier stopped at his home for shelter. The poor man didn't have anything to give his guest except the bread that the woman had given him, so he offered him that. The soldier said, "That's all right. I don't want anything to eat. I just need some shelter from the rain." But the poor man insisted that he have some bread. The soldier ate the bread and soon became deathly sick. The house was too far from town to call a doctor, so the soldier died. The poor man journeyed to town to report the death, and a policeman and doctor came to investigate the cause. The doctor told them that the soldier had died from poisoning. He asked the poor man where he got the bread that the soldier ate. The poor man told him that a woman gave it to him and took the policeman and doctor to her house. When the policeman asked the poor man why he did not eat any of the bread, he said he had some old bread he wanted to finish first. The policeman then took the woman along, and they all went back to the poor man's house, where the body was. Here the woman discovered that the soldier was her son, who was coming home on leave. The poor man said to the woman, "You never did give anything to me except the nice loaf of bread, and I thought I was giving my best to the soldier. You didn't know that you were fixing it for your son. That's the way it happens for those who try to do the wrong thing. They do it to themselves."